Hi everyone, this is my first video as a YouTuber. My name is Jumpin' Joe. You can call me Joe or JJ or whatever feels right, really. Now that introduction is over, I want to move on to the topic of this video. I think I just might have an idea of where the 10th generation of Pokemon may take place. I would even go as far as to say I think I know what the colors of the box art for Gen 10 might be. So in recent games, I'll go over this briefly, but we've had like hints or teases for the next generation of games. In X and Y, there was the strange souvenir that you could later buy in Sun and Moon. In Oras, there was a poster with an Exeggutor with a long neck, I believe. In, I think, Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon, there was a poster that showed Gigantamax Toxtricity. And in Sword and Shield, there was a hotel room, I believe, that had patterns depicting oranges and grapes. Since, we would later on realize that this was for Scarlet and Violet. I think you get the point. So I think the same is true for Scarlet and Violet, and I think the thing that is hinting Gen 10 is none other than Gita. Gita always felt off, like she didn't quite belong in Paldea like every other character. For one, her mannerisms are quite different and her appearance is pretty unique compared to everyone else. She also just doesn't speak Spanish. I know a lot of characters don't speak Spanish, but for someone that is supposed to be important and is referred to in a Spanish title, being La Primera, she doesn't really do a lot of speaking in Spanish. That's just a side note, but the first point I have with Gita is that her name translates to three-leaf arrowhead in pretty much every language. The only languages where they don't translate to that exactly is either the genus or family of the three-leaf arrowhead, which is close enough, so, I did some digging, and it turns out the three-leaf arrowhead is commonly found in parts of Europe and Asia. It makes sense for Paldea since, Spain and Portugal are in Europe, but it's the part about the plant being in Asia that I want to talk about. For one, the three-leaf arrowhead is also commonly referred to as the Chinese arrowhead. Now, does this mean that the next gen will take place in a China-based region? I'll get to that later with more points, but I do definitely think it solidifies that Gita's name does have some meaning to having Asian origins as well. Another thing to note about Gita's name is that it also has Hindu origins, Italian origins, and even Greek origins. So that all bodes well with her name being a hint, because all of those places that I mentioned also are in Europe and Asia. I think India in particular has strong possibilities of being a region, because we know there is an Indian region out there somewhere. Because in Raichu's older Dex entries, it talks about how it can knock out an Indian elephant, and in Legends Arceus this was changed to say Kaparaja. And in the Galar and Paldea dexes, they always talk about how Kaparaja came from a different region. So I think there is confirmation that there is an Indian region out there somewhere, which could be Gen 10 or Gen 11. I don't know, but I think we know it exists somewhere. There's just nothing really proving it yet, but there are definitely hints for that. Overall, I think it still supports the idea that we're going to get a region in Asia rather than Europe again, because Generation 10 is likely to come out or be announced during the 30th anniversary, which would make sense because, after 5 regions of being in either Europe or the US, they probably want to return to Asia at some point, or at least visit a whole different, place altogether. Now, I actually have a second point that doesn't have to do with Gita. The second point I have is about this generation's mythical Pokemon, Pecharunt. If you don't know already, Pecharunt is the mythical trio master of the Loyal 3 Legendaries. It is based off of the Momotaro story, and of course a Peach, or at the very least, Pokemon's equivalent of the Peach being the Pechaberry. I bring this up because many mythical Pokemon have always hinted toward the next generation, or even the region itself in one way or another. An example would be Zarude, the monkey mythical that was introduced in Gen 8. I'm pretty sure I don't know where I got this from. I think it might have been from a Lockstin video. But so apparently the only place in Europe you can find monkeys is Gibraltar. And Gibraltar is very close to and has heavy relations with Spain. So that could have possibly been a hint there. But like, why is this important? Well, I decided to do research on Petron's origins and I found some pretty interesting stuff. For one, in the current day, the countries that produce peaches are the US, Spain, Italy, India, and China. You might see where I'm going with this. Spain makes sense because it is what Paldea is based on. India and Italy still fit with the three-leaf arrowhead plant being found in Europe and Asia. But it's China that once again pulls my attention because upon further research, it turns out that genetic research shows that peaches were originally from the country of China. So peaches are indigenous to China, and in the game series where the mythical Pokemon is a hint of the next games, and of course this mythical Pokemon has its own event related to Japanese folktale. I think this is something that's pretty overlooked part, so I think that's just something to like note. But you might think that doesn't really mean anything. You're right, but that's not the only thing I have. Because I want to bring up something else that is heavy in Petron's lore. Now, I haven't played or seen the mythical events, but based on Riddler Koo's leaks and PokeTubers having hacked the item for the event into the game, I know that Mochi has a big part to do with Petron, as the event is literally called Mochi Mayhem. This is important because upon even further research, I found out where Mochi was first made. Care to take a guess? If you thought of Japan, you'd be right partially because, yeah, mochi is traditionally Japanese food, but it is also true that mochi can actually trace its origins to China. Now, it's not exactly the same, but origins depict either Japan or China, but I think China has their own version. It's called Mato. I'll just put the word in the front anyway, but this is basically the origin of mochi in which Japan took it and made it their own. So you could still technically say that mochi originates from China because it's generally the same like kind of recipe. They just put their own spin on it, you know? But with that aside, it's almost as if the game is screaming to us that the next generation will take place in a China-based region. I think using the whole Momotaro folktale is almost the perfect way to like take away attention from Petron's literal origins with the peaches and the mochi. All that is some pretty interesting stuff with some heavy implications, I feel. So while I calm down a bit from that revelation, I want to bring up the topic of the colors of the box art for Gen 10. Now this isn't a particularly strong point, but I think Gita's color scheme could also be a hint to what the box art would look like for Generation 10, being the colors blue and yellow, as there isn't really anything that matches her like design or color scheme in the game to my memory. And it's pretty unique too. It just looks so different from what we get. Plus, in almost every generation, we've had red or blue represented in some way, shape, or form. Just to go over quickly, red and blue, you know, obviously they have red and blue. Gold and silver, Ho and Lugia have red and blue in their designs. Ruby, Sapphire, Groudon, Kyogre are literally just red and blue. Diamond and Pearl have blue and pink. So it's not exactly red, but it's close enough. What's next? Black and White. See, both Reshiram and Zekrom have designs of blue and red in them. Like Reshiram has like blue eyes but a red tail. Zekrom has red eyes but a blue tail. X and Y, Xerneas, Yveltal, blue and red. Sun and Moon are a bit different because they're like orange and purple. But if you look at some designs of like the titles or the actual box art, they show either red and purple or like orange and blue. So it's like, you can basically say it's red and blue, orange, purple, whatever. It still kind of counts. Sword and Shield are literally blue and red. And of course we have Scarlet and Violet that include red, but no blue. So I think the colors blue and yellow could still work, even if it's missing the red, because we've already got a region. Maybe even two regions if you think pink is too far from red. that don't include both red and blue. But this one does include at least blue, so I think it still could work. Now, this is probably the third and final point that I have, which is the Ruinous Quartet. They also have like Chinese inspired names, and we know that they were brought to Paldea by some merchant, in which the greedy Paldean emperor decided to get them all, remember? Not only that, but they're also based on a series of mythical creatures known as the Four Perils, which are a group of 4 Chinese mythical creatures that bring ruin everywhere they go. So I think this is definitely just more like, it's just feeding more into the idea that we're getting like a Chinese-based region. There's another video I saw, I think it's from LumiosePost, where they go over basically how generations aren't just teasing like the next generation, they also might be teasing like 2 generations ahead. And over there, they go over how in Gen 8 there was a lot of stuff about like China or India, in which they thought that would be for Generation 9, but it could also just be for Generation 10. Things that were like Chinese inspired or like hints toward a China-based region in Gen 8 would be the Isle of Armor, which alone generally has a very Chinese aesthetic to it, but also like Urshifu, they also just straight up like, they do kung fu, I think anyway, I could be wrong. But also the Ginkgo Guild, okay, the Ginkgo Guild, I'm pretty sure in LumiosePost video they say how ginkgo is like a type of flower found in China. And of course, in Legends Arceus, they added another, well, they're not genies, but I think we all just know them as genies. They added a Force of Nature, a 4th one, in Namorous, in which all of them actually have Chinese origins and inspirations. So that there, in Generation 8, let alone what I said for Generation 9, being Petrant and Gita, like, there's a lot of hints. And then there's the Ruinous Quartet. So, basically, to summarize, Gita's name origins translating to the 3-leaf arrowhead plant, which is commonly referred to as the Chinese arrowhead, which is also commonly found in Europe and more importantly Asia, added with the fact of Petrant's more literal origins of being a peach and using mochi, plus the 4 base game legendaries having Chinese names and origins, and in Generation 8, we not only like had a very Chinese inspired place with Chinese inspired legendaries, and heck, like even like more Chinese inspired legendaries and games that came afterward. I think they all come together to hint to a China-based region. Now, sure, there are a lot of other possible countries, like what I mentioned, India. So it's like we know that it exists somewhere. So that could also be a possibility. And even like Italy or Greece, I think those would be cool. But I think most signs point to China. And this could also be a bit of a stretch, but Unova games are being thought of for potential remakes, or at least like new games that take place in Unova, in which Embor, the fire starter, also has Chinese origins. It's a bit of a long shot since I know Embor is also the only Unovan starter that has Chinese origins. I just felt like it was like, oh, it lined up perfectly. So, I thought I should mention it at least. But anyways, I think that's all I have to say. I also have a shorter theory regarding the Loyal 3, which I might go more into detail about the whole China region theory. If anyone ends up seeing this, let me know your thoughts, and even if you have more points to add to my theory. I'm sure there are things that I thought of and forgot to mention, because, that's just how things are. I will send links to videos where I mentioned in like earlier to other like YouTubers' videos to see like so you can understand how I came to certain conclusions. But overall, I think the next generation is likely to take place in a China-based region. It just feels the most likely. It feels whole, and there's just a lot of hints in Generation 8 and 9. It'd be weird, honestly, to not have a China-based region, either for Generation 10 Or Generation 11, who knows? They might not even do it. They might even just say, yeah, we'll have Chinese-inspired things, but never do anything with them. I don't know. Anyways, that is for real, all I have to say. Let me know your thoughts. If you disagree, agree, or have anything to add. See ya.